This video is intended to describe a lightblade wand named Coherence, which would be the 7th rendition in the last couple months have organically come into existence. Joining me today to assist with this in-depth dissertation is a whimsical six-figure chakra map, which I'll be referencing quite a bit for various guide energetic pathway chakra stimulation points. So without further ado, I'll be discussing the primary blade band scaffolding as a preliminary, involving the sequence seen right here, going laterally like so, underneath this lovely lapis blue leather, as well as this conjoined right there, and this apex band right here, as well as this lateral band, which basically serves as the light blade scaffolding that works as the recirculation containment field of the entirety of the complexity of this vibratory output device, to quite simply recirculate in what vaguely resembles a figure 8 for perpetual recirculation energetic momentum of this entire closed-loop reactive energetic broadcast unit. So, starting off with that concept, always very relevant to have a foundational preface would be the transmutation ratio seen right here. This lateral band is exactly the same sequence as underneath, now concealed, going down to here, connecting this lateral band, as well as there's a quadrant right here of the same frequency, going like so, conjoining right here. So that, and also, of course, that would be also describing the engine bay band, so to speak, for the ultimate recontainment circulation. That would be consisting of hematite, which is a very fantastic iron-based mineral to take all excess radial energy and firmly ground it through the root chakra into the earth for reprocessing. In tandem with smoky quartz providing the same energetic stimulation pathway to further compost all excessive energy through the root chakra into the earth meridian matrix for reprocessing. Hence, the two together are deemed the transmutation ratio by its high grounding capacity to earth plane for rapid transition or etheric energetic dialysis, if you would. And of course, it has many purposes, and so by itself as a standalone frequency, it's very effective for dispersing and discouraging any stored negativity to be rapidly processed into the earth to, of course, discharge the system and recirculate, as well as it plays a critical role to, of course, encourage tangibility and grounding of the entire exotic crystalline wavelength output this is developed to produce, inherently just based on its hardware disposition. So, of course, that plays a very critical role, once again, to be a contingency to make sure the excess energy of this entire output is recirculating and, most importantly, grounding into the earth to, of course, make the magic real is one of my favorite phrases I employ quite often, and to be its own little surge protector to keep things grounded into tangibility. Quite simply, I will say it probably thrice more times because I'm always compelled to thoroughly discuss those aspects. So that'd be just the transmutation quadrant mentioned so far, which, once again, to reiterate, underneath this lovely lapis blue leather, there are hand bands going to here, conjoining to this lateral band, so it's its own quadrant of this particular sequence, which plays a very critical, pivotal base scaffolding. Then on to the primary blade band, hence the reason for the season why the archetypal dubbing of this construct is called Coherence. So this would be the coherence ratio output, which, like I mentioned, would be the 7th rendition in the last couple months to come into existence. Starting off with clear quartz seen right here, which is a neutral accelerant of energy going into rutilated quartz, which is, of course, is clear quartz with titanium oxide in the structure to work as a massive rutile accelerant. So you can think of clear quartz being a very powerful neutral ambient accelerant to other frequencies, while rutilated quartz takes that even further as a massive supercharger of other frequencies in an octave sequence. And going into purple fluorite, which is a quintessential agent of coherence, the emanation-wise, so to speak, hence the archetypal placement has been well utilized with this particular frequency output of crystalline ignition sequence. So the aspect of fluorite seen right here makes an incredible third eye stimulation, as well as a chaotic mitigation of bringing, quite simply, chaos into order through coherent energy balancing, and also alignment of the prefrontal lobes of the left and right hemispheres, aka whole brain thinking, mitigated cross interference, a coherent perceptive field, basically. Based on its implication. I know some of these things will be redundant, just I'm very compelled to be very thorough as possible, while maintaining sensibility. Not as easy as it appears. So then, of course, the fluorite being the quintessential bringing structure into energy and focus into form, just like implied with the concept of coherence of taking disparate light and coherently focusing it, can make a laser beam to actually generate the heat required to have a laser cut. Quite simply, very clearing, sharpening frequency in that regard, which is inherently beneficial for mental body aspects as well as just, latent capacity as one's divine blueprint. Anyway, moving on back to the cataloging of the construct. Then to subcapacitate the fluorite would be that of golden healer quartz, which is a tremendous gold white light source, high heart attunement, where obviously having a direct, clean attunement to the source of creation is very advantageous. Understatement of the day, I would say. And that by design, of course, is developed to be a very powerful, coherent alignment to the source broadcast emanation, the heart of creation, if you would, or the heart of the force, as a little joke. Then going into the classic lapis lazuli, which is a very famous blue ray crystal of antiquity, which I will omit because this video will be very long inherently based on its complexities to notarize. But the aspect that makes it relevant is lapis is a fantastic 5th and 6th chakra stimulant of window mental concentration of classic utilization, quite literally a favorite of millions for thousands of years. So its steeped magical lore is quite vast in the human history that we can recall upon and recorded at least by consensus standards. And so this is a very, very powerful higher self, sovereign self, highest truth alignment as well, with great amount of magical belief backing that through the annals of history of magical utilization. So that's enough about that, I'd say, to keep things on target. So of course the sequence continues with lapis, rutilated quartz, fluorite, golden healer quartz, lapis, and so on until it goes back into the clear quartz to be the neutral grounding back into the transmutation scaffolding. So this intensively high yield clearing mental body higher chakra activator has a firm ground point to encourage the excess figure 8 to of course disperse into the earth and recirculate and quite simply be an efficient spiritual in that regard. So like mentioned, that would be grounding into the transmutation ratio, which goes through this entire part of the quadrant of the construct. And so this lateral band right here is an auxiliary piece that will basically serve as a border for the hood, which I'll discuss momentarily, but this also works as a very prominent recirculation of energy of this particular ratio as well. Starting off with red jasper to be the quintessential root chakra stabilization agent in the mineral kingdom. And then that is subcapacitated by tourmalated quartz, which actually is clear quartz, which works as a great neutral accelerant of a sequence. Yet the black tourmaline in the structure makes for a very massive independent acceleration of, once again, transmutation by firmly resonating with the earth plane for constant reprocessing. So that's particularly why this ratio was employed here, is to further intensify the clearing capacity of the lower 3 chakras of this entire subroutine right here, which is developed to be an impeccable contingency further to the very higher source chakra active capacity right here. And speaking of that, back on target, that relevant concept is, of course, with the black tourmalated quartz being a neutral, purifying, grounding acceleration in its own right, going into sunstone. Sunstone's a very fantastic fire elemental, sacrum, and solar plexus stimulant of a very nice feldspar manner, which means feldspar has a very nice atomical alignment with the physical body in a very earthy fashion. But this is very much a quintessential cardinal sun fire energy that is very enthusiasm generating and very much a antidepressant, to put it quite simply, and very much an enthusiasm fortification for particularly the sacrum and the solar plexus. So it's a very, very lovely, incredible, beneficent stone of enthusiasm. Going into tourmalated quartz once again into tiger's eye. Tiger's eye is a fantastic lower 3 chakra stimulant, yet it takes the alignment of the solar plexus, the sacrum, and the root chakra and perfectly aligns the lower 3. So when you take the excessive stabilization and then the intensive stimulation of the root and the sacrum, and then with the solar plexus, align the equilibrium of the lower 3, it makes for a fantastic lower 3 chakra activator with a high purification subroutine to encourage any densities found in lower 3 to be highly discouraged with stability, enthusiasm, and one's enlightened intention, quite simply by design for that lateral band. And once again, that makes for a fantastic contingency for the inherently higher chakra activation capacity of a coherent output of source alignment, quite simply, through the lens of one sovereign self in connection with their I am template. So now, I'll be discussing this white leather hood, which will be cut to size, but I'll discuss its function right now in tandem with blue leather. So the aspect of leather employed in these constructs is always far more than aesthetic, so it's always worth it meriting its own individual dissertation on the concept. So it'll look vaguely like this, but obviously while I'm at it, I will aesthetically cut it to size, but at least it'll kind of give a good descriptive purpose for this dissertation right here. So the aspect of the lapis blue leather is indeed a color therapy resonant vibrational support to the heavy 5th chakra concentration activation, as well as both of these hood sequences work as a way to, of course, insulate the energy, so that the energy seen right here is not leaking like so, and it basically efficiently circulates and focuses the energy through the primary blade bands like so it goes more cleanly, less energy leakage basically, through the engine bay band as well as the primary blade band. So it has more of a contained output for the crystalline exposure right here. As well as it's a way to naturally protect the constructs or the crystals underneath the handband, as obviously it's developed to be wielded in the hand. So this will protect these handbands seen down here, no longer seen actually, because it's very well concealed underneath the lovely lapis blue leather, but at least it gives the idea. Particularly when it comes to the engine bays, these are quite critical to, of course, protect all the subtle terminations seen right here. And with such a vast reactive emanation sequence grounded to a single main vein primary wire, it's very essential, of course, to actually have a nice hood containment. So once again, I can't reiterate this enough because it's quite critical to convey correctly, in my opinion, is to prevent the mitigation of the energy from leaking laterally, while actually it focuses it further through the blade band scaffolding through the entire apparatus for maximum efficiency's sake. Okay, I feel like that was a pretty good justice to the dissertation right there. So now, we're going to go ahead and tackle the engine bay right here, now that the entire blade band's scaffolding has been tackled after only 12.5 minutes. So I guess I'll discuss the main heart of the crystal, if you will, the engine bay, as first things first. This would be a specimen of smoky celestial quartz, which has always been quite the challenge to speak of it in a rational, linear, coherent fashion based on its very far-out applications. But practice does make perfect. So smoky quartz is the base structure, just like mentioned the transmutation ratio throughout the entire scaffolding, yet the celestial growth pattern plays a pivotal role in virtually all complexive light tech devices for a very critical feature to work as a auto-regulatory frequency diffuser to auto-adjust the entire frequency pitch of the device itself to the optimum range to whoever is wielding it, which also means that it changes vibratory threshold pitch to any auric template it comes in contact with for rapid resonance and alignment. So to put it simply there, it does change the behavior of the entire vibratory device based on one's higher self blueprint scaffolding, but that's kind of getting off topic and very far out, so I have to kind of rein myself back in, obviously. It's not as easy as it appears. But the aspect what's relevant here, to bring it back to somewhat Earth, I guess you could say, is that this particular crystal frequency pitch will bring a very comfortable resonance, like a dimmer switch, to ensure that optimum frequency range of the entire construct is in the comfortable idyllic pattern with the auric field in contact with, such as the primary recipient or the other people involved with the wielding of this construct, for example. So I feel like that's probably enough about that for now, because I still have a whole bunch more to discuss. But that would be the main heart for this very distinct purpose, to bring equilibrium moment to moment based on the requirements of the template. Okay. Time to clear the throat and move on. And so to further fortify the strong blue ray concentration construct, at the very apex of the engine bay would actually be a specimen of blue sapphire. Blue sapphire, seen right here, is quite the legendary crystal of antiquity. As a corundum, it has oftentimes 8.5 or 9 out of 10 the hardness scale, which means its blue ray capacity has a very dense atomical, quite literally legendary frequency output, utilized by magi and royalty of antiquity with great effect. Hence it's a true precious stone that most mortals have heard of because of its extreme deification lore in the annals of history so far. And to bring it back to somewhat relevancy with that little lore drop, is the aspect of the very dense atomical structure of the blue ray of sapphire has a very, very powerful stimulation of the sovereign centers of the 5th and 6th chakras in tandem, which makes it a very fantastic ENT, ear, nose, and throat fortification to idyllic standards based on crystalline resonance. Very fun fact. As well as a stone of sovereign truth, much like lapis lazuli in this capacity, they of course have a very complementary frequency range stimulation of the 5th and 6th window mental concentration of the blue indigo ray. But the aspect that's very critical here too is that is very much a stone of royal virtue, quite literally drawing upon great amounts of legend and magical utilization. Then down here would be a lovely purple ray crystal named chaurite. Chaurite is a very fantastic wind elemental, 6th, 7th, 8th chakra stimulant, higher chakra stimulant, yet the black dendric and calcite found in the structure has a very, very intrinsically dynamic activation range. So with the black dendric, it actually has a very powerful independent soul star black ray activation to bring the energy through the entire body, which is very effective for quite simply setting up a bubble of light that's its own containment field. Then the calcite in the structure also works to diligently clear the patterns of stagnancies from top to bottom as well. So I would consider this a tremendous violet ray dharmic accelerant of divine emanation from top to bottom in its own right. By itself, it's quite the potent master frequency healer in that regard as well. But of course, I should probably say this right now. As I'm discussing the complexities of this construct, each of these crystalline allies somehow, some way have been terminated to the primary wire seen right here of copper, brass, and silver that serves as the main vein. So each of these crystals mentioned right now are part of one continuity, so it's almost akin to discussing crystalline organs to this little crystalline entity crystal pistol for comprehensive dissertation conceptualization. So that's an important aspect too, is that each of these guys are playing off each other through this entire construct for maximum vibrational compound interest as a unified collective field emanation. Then above that would be the classic rose quartz, a fantastic pink ray high heart love frequency resonator, quite famous, thank goodness. Then right here would be a very special crystal named ruby and zoisite. So ruby is a red ray crystal of antiquity that's very famous as well as a corundum-based, very dense, strong red ray root chakra activator that's quite legendary. But the natural synergistic combination of having the zoisite in the structure also provides a very powerful green ray heart-mind coherence stimulant. Hence, it's been further employed towards the thumb engagement, which eventually I will get there, but I wanted to kind of make a quick little correlation. And so the aspect also of the heart-mind coherence, well fortified with the zoisite, and then, thank goodness, the ruby in the root chakra makes for a dramatic activation, which activates the true, authentic heart-mind coherent self of one's dynamic self fully manifest. So that's precisely why that's a very pivotal frequency placement that's also been honored in a bead format in the thumb engagement, which eventually, like I said, will correlate as once I get there, because this will still be quite a bit to discover for the engine bay. Then right here is fire agate. Fire agate is the most stable lower 3 chakra stimulator of the fire element that stimulates and stabilizes, most importantly, the solar plexus, the sacrum, and the root chakra for the in-the-body zest for life experience, quite simply, and is an absolutely incredible fortification of lower 3 chakras in the most stable format possible, particularly in light of a very dynamic built-out construct. Having stabilization of the root with the red jasper and the lower 3 in general is very, very effective. Perfect antithesis to the general Blu-ray vibration of highest truth engineered. Then right here would be a purple variety of serpentine called stitch type. Serpentine and stitch type, for that matter, are both fantastic full light-bodied kundalini activators of the entire chakra column. Yet the stitch type has a nice purple emanation, which makes a very nice soothing vibration towards the higher centers of the neural pathways too. So it's a very nice insulating full healing frequency in that regard as well. Then right here is literally the power of lightning. This is fulgurite, which is the product of lightning being striking sand, I should say, and literally carrying the power of lightning, which is a very powerful full light body activator as well, because literally is the mimicking force of lightning. And so this was also a tool utilized by shamans of antiquity to resonate, to intensify their prayers back to spirit in service to the jurisdiction of whoever they were serving with magic or medicine back in the day. So it's a very famous, powerful stone of magic. Then right here, this would be a lovely specimen of green chrysoprase. Chrysoprase is an incredibly nourishing green ray heart chakra stimulant, water elemental spectrum that's very, very encouraging to altruism and one's innate divine goodness, quite simply, and a tremendously underrated green ray crystal for that capacity. Then right here would be proper serpentine, quite literally from my backyard. There's a dried out riverbed right here in Mount Shasta. That literally is a Mount Shasta locality from right there. So serpentine, like mentioned, like stitch-tight, is a very fantastic full light body serpentine kundalini activator as well. That's very effective for cellular respiration for that regard. So basically hitting from like the greenish and the purple rays, it's a nice dual balance of the kundalini flow of idyllic energy pathways, mitigating stagnant output cohesions. Anyway, so then as a further stability agent, this would be moss green agate, which is a green ray stabilization of the heart chakra as well. So aspects of the agates and jaspers are quite crucial for the longevity output of this entire device to bring an elemental continuity stabilization in different spectrums, which is a very, very good equilibrium, longevity, conducive emanation concept in the operational system. So, by golly, I do believe that would be just the engine bay finally mentioned. So, continuing on. So like mentioned, this transmutation ratio continues right here in case anybody forgot by now with all this long-winded, far-out whimsicality. And then it goes into the thumb engagement, which I'll use this magical book to prop it up to illustrate. So, just as implied, that is developed for the thumb to engage like so. As the primary thumb engagement for the direct contact resonance of engagement sequence. So the entire foundation of this thumb engagement would that be of clear quartz, which of course works as a very neutral ambient accelerant of energies of both the hardware of the crystal ignition sequence as well as the software input, or basically the prayers going into it, that would put it into the realm of consciousness assisted technology. And so that's exactly why this is very clean, clear, straight, clear quartz for the impulses of the vibrational output of the recipient to go into it for prayers, for example, is developed right here to resonate with the entire apparatus. And anyway, moving on once again. So this entire blade band sequence is a very, very lovely heart chakra centered frequency of exonic range, starting off with, once again, tourmalated quartz to work as a neutral acceleration and transmutation of the sequence seen right here. Going into peridot. Peridot is a fantastic third and fourth chakra stimulant of the earth elemental spectrum, that of positivity, and in my humble opinion, the equivalency of the frequency of chlorophyll, how all this happens, in a crystalline structure, which is very expansive, very positive, and very nurturing, and very growth-inducing, basically, as well. In that regard, as also, when it comes to abundance and you name it, it's been quite well utilized in these endeavors for a while now, and it's truly an amazing crystal of extreme heart-nourishing positivity. Then going into tourmalated quartz to further intensify and transmute this sequence into, once again, the ruby and zoisite, like mentioned in the engine bay down here. So the ruby and zoisite, like mentioned before, to highlight the significance of why this is placed here, is the aspect of the impeccable heart-mind coherence stimulation, with the root chakra, ruby, being a powerful zest for life engager as well, which is very, very energetically encouraging to one's authentic sovereign truth, grounded into reality for that capacity. And I'll put my helpful magical book prop back as I discuss the blade facing, and we're actually making very good time for this dissertation. So another blue-ray crystal of antiquity that's quite famous, like lapis, a favorite of millions for thousands of years, would be turquoise, which has a very, very vast lore, which I will omit to do what I can to consolidate this long-worded dissertation. But the aspect of turquoise has a very powerful fifth chakra stimulation that combining the elements of the Lakota medicine wheel, or the terrestrial four elements of earth, fire, water, and wind, which is very, very effective for power of wholeness through the elemental spectrum to maintain the lens of ideal sovereign connection to who they are in truth, as well as being a fantastic product stimulant of the entire energy body of oxidization. But anyway, that's why it's there. It's quite famous, and I will just keep going to continue on and stay on target. So this right here, oh, and by the way, of course, they have been installed as symmetrically as absolutely possible on both sides when I'm discussing one side for ultimate symmetry vibrational balance as much as possible. As a quick little preface before I continue on. So this right here would be purple lepidolite, which is an incredible anti-anxiety soothing frequency emanation that has been well utilized. And as a bit of a reverent joke I'll mention right now, when these concentrated platforms of serenity go into operational status, I jokingly refer to them as Xanax on a stick because of the extreme high lithium concentration in the mineral has an extremely soothing vibration. That's why it's an appropriate joke. And then the aspect of the potassium further brings a nice grounding to the nervous system through the entire transfer of the energy of this extreme soothing output. So this frequency is very impressively calming and is a quintessential stop and smell the roses kind of good feeling vibration, quite simply, based on its extreme nourishing, soothing anti-anxiety capacities of extreme well utilization. So this right here would be classic amethyst. Amethyst is a very famous, thank goodness, purple ray crystal, that of the 6th, 7th window mental, 8th non-physical chakra stimulation back to one's Godhead as well. As a very, very, thank goodness, standard frequency in most light workers' toolboxes, basically. This is very good stuff. And so that's why these large pieces have been, of course, incorporated here for further divine conductivity. That's very discouraging for further negativity to be intrusive, basically, of all forms. And then right here is a very, very special placed crystal of blue lace agate. So blue lace agate is a water elemental most stabilizing stimulation of the 5th chakra in the mineral kingdom, which is quite integral because you can think of the entire energy body literally energy coalescing up and literally bottlenecking, like very much appropriate analogy, to the 5th chakra, which is a distinctive pressure valve as it condenses towards the higher chakra perception. So having a very well stabilized, fortified 5th chakra represented here is very, very efficient, particularly for the high yield spiritual G's this guy's hardware is developed to produce with plenty of contingencies and grounders, of course, installed to get the most out of it for efficiency's sake. But the blue lace agate is quite critical for the stabilization of the 5th chakra in that regard. That plays an integral role. Then at the very apex of the blade band is a very special crystal called Tibetan black quartz. Tibetan black quartz is an incredible full light body activator from top to bottom, that of the Soul Star and Earth Star simultaneously, making a very powerful unified ohm resonant toroidal field frequency overlap that's very, very discouraging for the patterns of dis-ease in all its varieties to maintain inside the auric field in that capacity. So that's exactly why this has been employed right here at the apex of the blade band to have a very powerful ohm resonance, full light body healing aspect, which of course is very indicative of the region of Tibet, which is a location in the world with very much strong concentrated spiritual discipline for millennia. So it has a very nice ohm frequency output further in tandem with the golden healer course to bring source attunement alignment. And something I did omit by accident, but now it's by providence, obviously, it's very relevant. This would be over here, would be seraphinite. So seraphinite is another master healer frequency I employ quite regularly with the Tibetan black quartz for the purpose of full light body activation from top to bottom to dismantle any patterns of dis-ease found in the system that would be manifesting as an ailment, so to speak, etherically transferring wise. And so that's, of course, why I'm kind of glad I omitted this guy, is that's why at the end of here is the same frequency, like a cousin, if you would, vibrationally speaking, to the Tibetan black quartz in application. All right, so this last section, we'll be talking about the wooden core, which actually is oak from my good buddy in backyard over here at the end of my pen, who occasionally drops branches on the ground for me. So the oak wood is quite the legendary carbon-based range of legend as well, which I will omit once again to do what I can to consolidate this, because it's already quite the mouthful. And so oak is a very dense atomical grain, which makes it a hard wood, which makes it a very appropriate foundational scaffolding of the carbon-based resonance of the earth plane, basically, for the silica output to have a very well self-contained further aspect of making the magic real. That's where oak comes in very essential for the core of this entire device to bring that silica carbon-based balance transfer into tangibility. And also, it's very prone not to break, which is a very big plus too, because oak is a very strong wood. Anyhow, so moving back on, so this next section we'll be discussing the selenites, the kyanites, as well as the focalizers, then the video is nearly complete. So the aspect of this whole 31 minutes I've discussed thus far, this vast crystalline array, is very, very appropriate here when it comes to the selenite part of the dissertation. So selenite by itself is an incredible white ray crystal that is a fantastic 6th, 7th, 8th non-physical chakra stimulant back to one's godhead, thereby working as a fantastic clearing of debris between one's conscious self and one's higher self, which is a very inherently advantageous disposition for the spiritual aspirant, obviously. And with that high frequency induction, makes for a very powerful purification from top to bottom of any stagnant energies to mitigate any densities that be once again affecting and manifesting as dis-ease in some variation. So by itself, it's quite the noteworthy master healer frequency, but where it truly shines in any given one of these tools is this critical feature. In a closed loop reactive circuit such as this, selenite takes the entire crystalline pitch seen here. It works to amplify all this entire crystal range. It also works to purify this entire crystal range. Perhaps most importantly, it also brings harmony, equilibrium, and resonant comfortability for the entire range of crystals as well. So I'm going to repeat that one more time. This is a really noteworthy triumphant trifecta, conceptually wise, is that it takes the entire crystal pitch of this entire complex device. It works to purify all these crystals. It works to amplify or intensify all these crystals, and also works to harmonize this entire crystal group. So that's always why that's a very critical aspect to discuss, which I always save for last in these dissertations, because it's a very comprehensive capstone. Then affixed to the selenites would be the 4 spectrums of kyanite available to me very easily. Starting off with black kyanite, orange kyanite, green kyanite, and blue kyanite. So when it comes to kyanite, I always use whimsically fast penmanship in the Whimsical Chakra Guide for this distinct purpose, do my best to illustrate the rapid transference capacity these guys have to offer. So black kyanite is the most rapid transfer of energy in the earth at as quick as possible, which works like a massive surge protector to ensure the frequency pitch range of this entire construct gets in the earth as quick as possible, which is a nice contingency to serve as a rapid adaptogen, if you would, discharge point, as well as a further way to tangibilize the magic, as well as orange kyanite being a lovely sacrum stimulant to the highest capacity, bridges past patterns of blockages, as well as green kyanite being a tremendous heart chakra stimulant that bridges past any kind of stagnant blockages as well as blue kyanite, which is a very fantastic third eye stimulant, particularly comes to idyllic mitigation of cross interference between the left and right hemispheres, aka the awakened third eye. And so also with the 4 spectrums of kyanite, it also makes another layer of etheric Teflon that rapidly disperses and diffuses and reroutes so quickly that intrusive negative energies have a very hard time, or difficult time I should say, interrupting the flow of consistent rerouting, so that stagnancies literally cannot basically maintain the field with that much rapid rebuffering, transmutation, and recirculation and bridging past blockage points for a very dynamic reactive flow of energy. I think that will do for the kyanites, as well as they play quite the critical role for actually taking the entire frequency pitch range and transferring the energy for tangibility's sake. Then right here will be the focalizer crystals. So of course these crystals in the perimeter of the primary blade band have been grounded to the primary wire so it can capitalize on the entire recirculation of energy while giving it a sharp focus. Hence, they're called the focalizer crystals. This right here will be titanium aura quartz, which is actually a modern alchemical man-made alteration, which is very, very applicable for these constructs. So it's clear quartz pressure bonded with titanium. Titanium is a very powerful metal, so when you bond it to a quartz structure, it makes a very powerful insulation of energy in the entire auric field, as well as a way to really strengthen energies. Hence, it's also terminated behind the clear quartz scene right here to give a very strengthened, focused sharpening of the entire output when broadcast directionally. So of course that makes for another very powerful full rainbow light body activator that's very protective for the subtle DNA of the auric field in general. Then right here being the clear quartz focalizers, like mentioned a few times now, clear quartz is a very neutral acceleration of energy, hence it makes for the idyllic focus of energy of this entire device. For example, so I got this guy engaged, thumb engagement, and I got my buddy out here, and this is where, of course, taking the excess current and directing towards the tree, like so, makes a very direct focused transference of energy to this sacred one-legged. As a relevant example for this little video. So, that's what those are meant to do. And by golly, I do believe that's the entirety of the crystalline tour notarized. So as a quick summary before I sign off, it of course is developed to be a very dynamic, full spectrum range chakra extended from top to bottom, its own efficient, well-contained closed loop circuit. And yeah, that would basically just be the summarization of Coherence 7 of the last couple months. Well, 1,000 blessings, and may the force be with us all.